So it turns out red meat might protect us against cancer risk. Yes, your steak, your ground beef might protect you. A new study of nearly 16,000 adults showed that animal protein consumption actually might protect against cancer risk. This is because those with higher animal protein intake showed a statistically significant reduction in rates of cancer.
So Brendan is parroting the same study that others like Menno have been to demonstrate that red meat does not increase the risk of mortality from cancer or other diseases. Now, I find it super ironic that he goes on to discuss the limitations of observational research when he clearly can't even critique the study he's using to make this claim. Time school. Firstly, Brendan is talking about how red meat might protect us from cancer risk, but that's not what this study is referring to. The study looked at the risk of death from cancer, also called cancer-related mortality, not the risk of getting cancer. Those are two very different outcomes. A simple analogy to explain this difference is the use of seatbelts. Seatbelts don't reduce the risk of getting into a car crash, but they can reduce the risk of dying once you've been in a car crash. So it's incidence versus mortality. That's why a factor can raise the chance of getting cancer, but be linked to a different outcome after diagnosis. Anyway, this is a study he's referencing. Just to be clear, they assessed their diet through a single 24-hour food recall and then followed them up for around 15 years. Now, I want you to think about this logically. Pick a random day 15 years ago and ask yourself, was your diet exactly the same on that day as it is now? Also, they didn't study red meat specifically. They looked at total animal protein. That's dairy, poultry, fish, red and processed meat all lumped together. So you can't claim that red meat specifically protects you from anything from this data. And there was no substitution analysis, which limits causal interpretation. And as a quick side note, it was literally funded by the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, so literally big beef. Not exactly super strong or reliable data, is it? So what does the much stronger independent research say? Well, the UK Biobank study, which looked at 475,000 adults, which specifically looked at unprocessed red meat and measured their diet at several time points. They showed that just per 50 grams of unprocessed red meat, their risk of colon cancer went up by 36%. And it was adjusted for background diet, including fruit and veg, physical activity, alcohol, fiber, smoking, and so on. So you can't say, oh, but they had rubbish diets. The researchers literally accounted for that. Another study on 5 Finnish cohorts that were followed for 29 years that actually performed a substitution analysis and found that just replacing 200 grams of unprocessed red meat a week with fruits, veg, or a mix of whole grains, fruits, and veg led to a 6 to 7% reduced risk of colorectal cancer. And that's just 200 grams a week. Most people who promote red meat eat far more than that. So even though I myself eat red meat, when you assess the strongest studies on this topic, we see pretty consistently that unprocessed red meat is linked to a higher risk of colorectal cancer, and that's why it's classified as a Group 2A probable human carcinogen. Class dismissed.